dirt on it and stuff. But go ahead, right down.
This is all I really have on this two event thing. So we have the start and the stop. Now, that's the two quantifiable events, right? Now, think about, we're trying to conceptualize the thing in between them, right? So the only thing we can quantify, like, empirically, is the start and the stop of the event, of the two events needed to track time. Now you have this thing in the middle, which, you know, that's when you start having to, like, break it down or something. That's where I'm just like, if any of that if that makes
that's exactly what I'm trying. That's exactly the point that I'm trying to make. If you're going to measure time, that's what it would be. What was in between the start and the stop. A millisecond before the start and a millisecond after the stop, or vice versa. Whatever.
You guys are like Faraday and Maxwell, man. You guys work together. You guys are building off each other.
As I think about this, all right, so you have the start and the stop, but remember, time is the unit in between those events. So when you go anytime, so you kind of actually start getting into this paradox of the only way you can quantify time is to stop.
This motherfucker is so boring.
You got it, man. We're on the same page now. At least somebody get it. When you come back in here, we'll talk about it again. These guys get.
Yeah, no, I want to think
they're about to play games anyway. If you're bored, you're looking for some fun. I think Kosher's setting up some trivia, so you should find that fun as we break down the heliocentric model, any paradigms that you guys might have. It's not fun, Chris, at all. It's painful to lose the globe in this manner.
Boring. It's boring.
I know it's boring because it's painful.
It's fucking, he's right. The fucking tard is a fucking troll. He's a self-confessed troll. He's not here to sincerely debate or convey any fucking sincere beliefs. He's here to fucking trigger and troll cunts. And for his own
Chris, if we look at what you do compared to Right the Hand here, you know, you spend all day. I mean, the real troll, Chris, is someone who spends all day focused on other individuals, right? You know, they make memes, they make false messages. They focus on all the flat earthers. I think he's not doing that, right? You're the one who's like, oh, I need excitement, I need fun.
I wouldn't object to it, but it's just fucking boring, Timo. It's boring.
That's what I mean. If you're looking for the excitement, Kosher's going to set that up for you right now.
And you're enabling it, cunt.
Yeah, Kosher's going to help you. Sorry, go ahead, Whitehand.
I didn't hear anything anyone said because you guys were talking over each other the whole.
Ah, that's Jeremy, not Right the Hand. But yeah, Chris, don't worry about it if you're bored. We take care of all those things. Like I say, Kosho's got the entertainment set up where you can answer questions. You can feel good once again that you know something, Chris. Right?
Go on down there, Chris, into and wait. It'll be on in a minute. We're almost to a point here about speed of time. Now shut up for a minute. Go ahead, Chemo.
Right the Hand is explaining the time thing, but I'm just saying to Chris. Don't worry.
Time.
Don't panic, Chris. We've got you covered, right? Kosher is setting the entertainment for you as we speak. Yeah?
You wouldn't know what's entertaining, Chemo.
Yeah, Kosher knows what entertainment is, all right, and he's setting it up.
You wouldn't know anyone who knows.
And Chris is the perfect subject for it too. So come on.
And Kosher is definitely not entertaining.
Show. What room are we going to be in for trivia?
It's above this room.
It
says trivia just above this room.
Which one?
We have our own text chat for trivia.
Hey, can you do me a favor and do a one-on-one with Chris, Coach O?
Well,
fucking leave Kosher alone, David. He's been doing well recently.
We're trying to get to the point over here, okay, Chris? Just hold on a minute. Stop that.
We don't know what time is.
We want to know what a second is.
A second is a unit of something we don't know what is.
We're not interested in any more Babylonian tacos around here, okay?
Well, we can get away from the measurement of time and talk about what time itself actually is, because time is not the measured duration of something. The duration is the time, not the measurement. or the color.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anybody could beat that point?
I don't think so. I think time is color.
Go on.
I mean, look, sky when it goes dark, and then when it comes light, that's time. And when you see a light sky is blue, so time is color.
But what's it smell like, though?
Light bulb to be a time machine of sorts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good call, Curved. That's why you're my mentor now.
You know, we can patent this shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the flat Earth. Of course we can.
All right, so everybody's clear on what time is now?
Yeah, but what's the cause?
It's the amount of drop between start and stop. That's where we're at right now. If you've got start and stop, and you've got that object falling in between that area, then that is actual time, correct? On Earth.
Well, what if it's atmospheric particulate contributing to the turbidity, not falling? It's just there, like hovering.
Like exactly. Temperature's controlling that. We already know that.
No, wait, whoa. I disagree. I think it's the toroidal field that's controlling that curve.
Yeah.
Again, go on.
Electromagnetic field.
All right, good job, Timo. We're going to work on this one.
Cutting you off. Say that one more time.
You've got to elaborate. You're making good points. You're starting something, but you're not following through. You need to elaborate and explain fully exactly what you're trying to get across here.
The toroidal field causes the turbidity of turbid space, which causes the molecules in space to vaccinate towards the bottom of the floor of our Earth, and therefore air pressure and temperature.
Like the foundations.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see that. Anybody want to add on to that?
Toroidal fields are invisible to the naked eye, so you can't see it.
I think it's all a clever ruse by the Babylonians who purposefully made wood not magnetic to disprove the dielectric magnetism of the world.
Well, you got to remember the Babylonians were part of the.
I agree with that one.
The Babylonians were the old world order, which are obviously the precursor to the new world order.
So I got a question.
Hey, the Babylon. You might be from the Babylonians, but I'm not from the Babylonians.
Well, foolish. I disagree with you. The New World Order had Hulk Hogan in it.
All right, I got a real question. If you've got a clock and you put it on in the basement of a skyscraper,
sounds like a fake question.
All right.
Hold on, dude. Let him ask his question, dude.
Osho, where's our fucking trivia, man?
It's in 3 minutes or something like that. Go ahead and ask your question, Jeremy.
Don't hold your... Put a clock. You put a clock.
What do you believe in, Kosho?
Jeremy, go ahead and continue.
You put a clock in the basement of a skyscraper, and then you take the same clock and you put it in the 70th floor of the same skyscraper, right? They're gonna eventually be different times because of the time dilation.
That's right.
I mean, this should be we could see this happening all over the world.
You can see it happening in your own house. You don't have to have a 70-story building.
All right, hold on a minute.
Oh, well, David, hold on. People are responding to Jeremy's question, man. And it's true, and this has been tested also. I think there was a scientist who did it with a laser.
What did you test it with, a clock?
With a laser.
With a clock, right?
I did it with the cesium atom.
If you drop something from a 70-story building and it hits the ground, that's the time that it takes for that the clock is running. Both clocks are running. Both clocks are running equal time.
They've been
from the
set
top
off.
of the building. There is no time dilation between an object dropping from the top of the building. The only time dilation is between the start and the stop, which is true time.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they would have set the clocks off at the same point, taken enough of a period of time to be able to measure a difference based on the tolerance of the instruments, and then they actually noticed they had one. That would be my guess, having not read any of the papers or seen any how they set it up. But that to me would make sense. They wouldn't need to say, "Oh well, we can only do it while we're dropping this tangerine down a lift shaft." It
sounds like a true. It sounds like a true believer statement to me. You got anything better than that?
I don't know. That sounded like a chicken rapist statement to me.
Why
so you can take a clock, you wind a clock up, you take a wind-up clock to the top of the building and a wind-up clock to the bottom of the building.
You would not take a wind-up clock because
why would a wind-up clock not work?
It's the same way as I can use a 10 mil spanner for a 10 mil nut, or I can use a slightly off imperial one. But you're basically saying, "Hey, fuck it, I'm just gonna, hand you this 50 mil spanner," and then you wonder why you can't undo the nut because you haven't got an instrument with the correct tolerance.
Oh, so you think that the cesium story is correct, where they take these cesium clocks and these cesium clocks can read 9 billionths of a second, and it can actually calculate what a second is by the 9 billionth reading of a second in that second, right? Do you have any proof of this 9 billionth of a second?
All right, if whoever wants to play trivia, if you meet down there.
Hold on, I'm asking a question. Does anybody have proof of the 9 billionth of a second?
Do you have any proof that cesium clocks aren't real?
I have proof that 9 billionth of a second can't be calculated. That's what my proof is, that you have no way of measuring 9 billionth of a second.
I can't hear you because David's talking, so I muted him.
He's in the trivia room.
Yeah, go up there, Chrissy. Go to the trivia room, please. Kosho's already over there.
Have a Trivia BC. Anybody playing trivia, come to Trivia BC and Trivia text chat. Thank you.
Kurt War's gonna go over there. So what do you think, Jeremy?
I think if this shit's really happening, then clocks would be off all over the place. Because
Jeremy, for fuck's sake, read what I just posted, okay?
You've got clocks going off.
Just stop. Read what I posted. It gives you an example of how long it would, how much of a shift you'd actually get in a clock if you actually measured against the entire history of the time the Earth has existed.
Let me just say this.
Go read. You keep making these points, but you don't bother looking into this.
Jeremy, let me just bounce this off
you got to remember, gravity is a set distance of time, okay? Gravity is the number one thing that your gravity has is the ability to tell time, and there's never been a gravity clock. Let's look up gravity clocks. I think I've heard of a gravity clock. Let's look one up.
Gravity is a force that causes acceleration, not a
it's not. You got to remember, your whole paradigm is already shattered, man.
Cool.
Here we go.
How much wrong you cram into one sentence?
We've got a gravity clock here.
Why keep raping chickens, David?
Why? Chemo knows what happens here. Chemo, you see what's going on here? Anytime you start questioning the official story, then everybody becomes something else.
David, don't worry. I have a really devastating. I have time destroyed. So
That's really fucking unlikely.
Well, let's talk. Let's talk about.
I want to refine it first, but I can guarantee you, when I'm done with this video, I will show everybody exactly how you cannot measure time with two events, because time is the measurement in between those two events, and you can't use the two events to measure the time in between the two events. It's a paradox.
I'm shaking in my boots.
Well, the good thing, that's not how we measure time.
Exactly, you're on Babylonian time. The Babylonians came up with the base 60 system, and all your math of the Earth, the distance to the sun, the speed of light, every bit of that's based on the 360 scenario.
So, David, when you don't like that, then why don't you invent your time?
I don't understand why you think why it's a bad thing to question something that just true believers can't have they don't have the ability to at least acknowledge that there's a different conversation that could be had about it. That's what I don't understand. It's like they say this is some type of you ballers are a religious sect or something. Well, I don't get it. I don't take this as a religious argument myself. And fuck a bunch of Babylonians 5,000 years later. I'm not worried about them. Okay.
Now invent your own time. Now it's the first second of the first day.
It's gravity. Time. Gravity equals speed equals time. That's the equation.
That's not even remotely close, David.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Not even like it. My head hurts to hear you say that. You don't understand these concepts. You've never even played these equations. Why are you citing what an equation is at this point?
Well, wait, because I've already got one under my belt. Temperature.
You've got nothing
so
under your
now
belt
we're going
except a fat gut. Okay.
I don't have a fat gut. You're wrong.
Well, you were eating what were you? What were you eating the other night? Beaver nuggets and
beaver nuggets,
beef jerky, and there was something, and then some chips at 10 o'clock at night.
Shit about beaver nuggets.
I'm just presenting that as evidence as my claim that David probably has a couple of extra.
Buc-ee's is an American treasure.
All right, so Right the Hand's going to come out with a video breaking down.
He'll come out with a video. It's not going to show anything.
Based off what he said, he's already working from a false premise.
Big surprise there, huh?
Well, I've rationalized it in
you agreed.
I helped rationalize it in his mind for him. You got it?
Yeah, you established that time is two events. You said you can't measure time without two events. So with that, that's it. That's all.
Yeah, see, we're there now. So we got it. So actual time as we know
David,
it is not. What?
Right, and you were saying earlier we measure time by the time between two events. That's not correct. We found a regularly occurring event, and we count the events to define time.
Hold on. You can't have a regular occurring event. You need two events. This is the point. This is why I made you agree to this before. So don't tell me you can have a event. Time.
I didn't agree to anything. Event. I'm just now coming.
Okay, well, it doesn't matter. It's a fact. You cannot measure time without a start and a stop. So you would quantify time not as the start or the stop, but the amount of.
Oh, you're talking about measuring time. I was talking about defining time. There's a difference.
Well, you can't. If you can't measure it, then it's not real. So once I prove you can't.
Well, once we define it, then we can measure it.
I posted a definition of the measurement of time. Do you agree with that statement?
Definitions. Hold on. Let me look through it. I can't see anything about time. Maybe I'm just...
Well, let me just. It's just a quick sentence. Time is measured by instruments such as a clock or a calendar. These instruments can be anything that exhibit two basic components. One, regular, constant, or repetitive action to mark off equal increments of time. Two, a means of keeping track of the increments of time and displaying the result.
Okay, well, you can't define time with the increment of time. So when you say time is defined as means of keeping track of the increments of time, that we got to throw that one out.
Exactly. You're getting it now.
Bro, you're getting how time is measured.
I know. I'm just reading off the definition. So I'm trying to work with you logically. So once we get rid of time, so that's not time.
You
so
can
we're going to say
to yourself silently.
Yeah. Regular, constant, repetitive action. That's the thing that time is.
Just most people here, there might be some semantics but I think most people here would agree with that definition of how time is measured.
Yeah, but it's not about consensus.
It's not
scientific consensus.
Time is not measured. Hey,
have an opinion.
Can I say something? Time is not measured.
Not yet, David.
Time is not measured.
You can't because of the nature of what you're trying to measure. You're trying. This is the basic concept. So time is the repetitive event, right? You have to have a repetitive event that has the same increment in between that event. So first you need 2 events, possibly 3 that have the same increment in between them. Then that's not time. Time would be the space between those 2 events. Now, how do you quantify those? The means of quantification is the repetitive events. You can't quantify what's in between it, which is what you're trying to quantify.
We're not quantifying what's in between those events. We're counting events.
How do you measure a length?
Yeah, that's a good one. Your argument is like saying you can't measure a length because you have to measure the space between the ends of the ruler. No, you use the ruler.
No, because in length we're measuring the physical matter. In time you're creating the concept based on the events between. You're creating a concept based on the 2.
In a length, you measure the start and the end, not the thing in between. Actually, you measure that by measuring the start and the stop. Right?
All right. Well, hey, I'm going to make a video, and then you can all comment on it and tell me how.
Yeah, but you are essentially stuck with no explanation at all. You can just stare at things and say, "Oh, miraculous," and that's it, because you can't make any conclusion from that. If you were really consistent, if you really want to be consistent in your view, right the hand, you are stuck with nothing than to stare at things and say, "Oh, great," and that's it.
And all and all you have is conclusions that you can make based on your personal.
That would be true.
No.
That would be true if you didn't have gravity.
No explanation for anything, because you claim every explanation is made up. So then what are you?
Well, that's what,
at all. I mean,
an explanation is made up.
Right, the hand. If you don't have an explanation for these guys or anything, you have to just stick to their explanation.
At all from that,
because
except to stare at something and say, "Oh, look," and that's right.
Okay, so then, well, if you think looking at something and then making up a story in your head is any better than just staring at it, be my guest. Make up all the stuff you want.
Some of those stories end up being
better
useful.
than just.
That is doesn't make them made up.
If you think a story you made up based on what you saw can be useful, go ahead.
Well, I'm using your use of the word story, since apparently everything is a story. It's kind of an overly broad word, in my opinion.
No, well, here's the thing.
I was just trying to use your term.
Well, let me articulate what I'm saying. An explanation. If we both see the same thing, a rock falling, I don't need to explain that the rock fell. We saw that. You're going to ask me why it fell. An explanation is based on what you can't see, right? So that's why it has to be made up.
I disagree, but we'll work with it for now.
No, that's not the correct.
But anyway,
well then don't just say no. Say
let me finish. If I've got a useful explanation, that means I can use it to figure out other situations without having to wait for them to finish happening.
Okay, I don't think you listened to anything I just said. You cannot have a useful explanation. Okay, so let me say this. You cannot have a useful explanation because the only thing useful is what you saw, which is self-evident and doesn't need an explanation. Explanations are stories you make. Oh, okay, well then let me get it all out. Stories are explanations you come up to tell why what you saw happened behind the scenes. Like you're explaining the rock falling with stuff that you can't see, because if you can see it, you wouldn't need to explain it.
Okay, and if I come up with an explanation, and then that explanation proves predictive of other situations, then that's what I would call useful.
Okay, and now remember when we went to prediction, I don't know if you were here for the whole prediction argument, and this is why I said—
I've heard several variations on it.
Okay, how about I'll break it down. We have the dice, it's a 6, I put a cup over it, we just show up to the house, I go, hey, look, there's a house, there's a cup, and I just go, I bet you there's a dice under that cup, and it's got a 6 under it. You go, that's bullshit.
I'm not talking about providing explanations or predictions to other people. I'm talking about predictions for myself. I'm not lying to myself when I make a prediction.
Okay, but your prediction—
You're talking about predicting something to other people. That's not what I was necessarily talking about.
No, hold on. This is why I don't even want to include predictions in any capacity, because when you explain something, right, like we saw a rock fall, and you're going to say, well, my explanation, even though it's just a story you make up, you know, that's useful because of predictions. And I'm going to be like, look, anything that happens that you got right was based solely on what you saw happen. So if you see a rock fall in air and you go, well, I'm going to predict it'll fall in water, but not as fast, right? And it does that. You can't be like, well, see, because I predicted that, the means in which I think it's happening, Earth pulling it down, is true. No, you just have the effect that you've observed, and the explanation is a story you make up for why. And that's the real point.
Explanation is still useful because I can make accurate predictions with it.
No, it's not useful. Predictions, you don't, here's the thing. When you drop a rock, you know how fast it's going to fall. So anything past this is not a prediction. It's all knowledge based on the event that you've observed. So every time you say prediction, it's not a prediction. It's knowledge based on the way the Earth works and way the world works.
Okay, I disagree, but I'll use your terms. I can use stories to put together knowledge that I've observed to make accurate stories about what's going to happen in the future.
Okay, but stories are just stories. The only thing you have that's empirical is the observed event.
But if I can,
right now,
but if I can make an accurate story about something that's going to happen in the future, is that not useful?
No, it's a guess, and you got right. Congratulations. You took an educated guess based on what you know, based on what you saw, and just because you happen to be right, it doesn't mean that your guess is the mechanical process by which it happened. No, you just got the guess right, man.
I don't actually care if I have the mechanical process exactly right. What I care about is if my story, to use your terms, was accurate.
The only way your story is based on what you saw. Of course it'll be accurate because it's tailored to what you saw.
Yes.
Okay, well then,
and then I can use that.
Be accurate.
Then I can use. Let me finish. I can use that story to make the new story about what's going to happen in the future accurately. That's the point.
But I think you're just using the knowledge to create, to simulate basically an event that you know is going to happen, how it's going to happen based on the things you've already. But that's not a prediction. Bro, that's not like you said, well, you are taking this knowledge.
I've dropped the word prediction. I've dropped the word prediction since you hate it so much.
But it's the concept is the same, that you think your guess somehow gives you insight to how matter reacts, and you're not coming to all of the conclusions.
I'm not
based
saying
on
it gives
how
me insight. I'm not saying it gives me actual insight into how things are actually happening. I'm saying that it gives me the ability to make accurate stories about the future.
I mean, I can do that too but I can do that too if I use nothing but how matter works. Okay, well then you don't have any Earth is a cause. You have the rock falling at a rate, and the knowledge of it'll do that in the future. That's not gravity. That's not space-time bending, my man.
That's what we call those stories.
Yeah, well, that's what gravity is.
Okay, we agree then. You agree with science. You just like using different words.
Bro, okay, mass doesn't attract mass. Space-time doesn't bend. You see the rock fall. That's my point.
Those are the stories that we. Those are the names for the stories that we use to make accurate stories about the future.
And all of that is based on the actual. So the only thing empirical. Let me ask you this: the only thing that if you had to bet your life on something, I was like, look, I'm going to give you 3 choices. You can bet your life the rock falls. You can bet your life it's because mass attracts mass, or you can bet your life because it's space-time bending. Which one would you bet your life on?
I'm gonna take my bet on the outcome,
which would be the rock falling. Exactly, and that's my point. The only thing anybody here is 100% sure about is that the rock will fall. Everything other than that is a story that you believe based on if you think it makes sense or not. Personal opinion, personal beliefs. This is my entire point.
But the whole point that you're still ignoring is that it's a story that lets us make accurate stories about the future. That's what we call useful. That's what we call predictions. I know you don't like those 2 terms, but that's what we call them.
But the point you're missing is that all of that doesn't come from the explanation that you came up from the observed event. It came from the observed event.
Yeah, and that's how we put it together.
Yeah, a whole string of observed events. So you've never observed space-time bending, so that's a story that you have to believe. The only thing you have that's empirical
but
is
it's
the observed
useful story.
Yeah, for controlling people into thinking science is like some super genius machine that can do anything.
Useful for making accurate stories.
The only thing that's useful in making accurate predictions about the future is how the Earth behaves uniformly and repetitively and according to whatever you want to call it, laws or whatever. The unchanging nature of reality and nature is what makes it predictable, not science and its insights into how it works. So don't
Science is science is the process of making those useful stories. That's it.
No, science is in the terms you're using, science is the process of understanding how the world works.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
okay,
so there's a bit of philosophy on top of that. There's a bit of philosophy on that.
Okay, so then let me change it.
Let me finish. Okay, let me finish. There's a bit of philosophy on top of all that, whereby we assume that it's safe to consider sufficiently accurate stories as true. That's just philosophical. We can't actually prove that, and that's fine. That's just an assumption that we decide to make.
Yeah, and that's been my point, man, is that you have, and this is why the separation of knowledge and belief is a big one. Like, because, you know, when I talk about the rock falling as knowledge, like, because yeah, that's everything we know, right? All of our knowledge is built upon that. If we dropped that rock and it fell at a different rate all the effing time, we wouldn't be able to do anything because we wouldn't have something in reality concrete which we can then start building our knowledge on. So to say that it's our model or the Ball Earth model that we've built up, no, it's reality which we started to quantify. Like, and this is a big
potato.
You know, this is my big. Well, I mean, quantifying reality doesn't equate to understanding how reality works. And science is going to sit here and try and tell me it understands how reality works when all I really think, all they've done is quantify what happens.
That's the philosophical decision that we make. That sufficiently useful stories are.
And I agree, it's philosophical. And that's why I say there is some form of religion to science, because at a certain point you get into
philosophy isn't religion.
I mean, science would be empirical. Philosophy is not empirical. You know, philosophy is like discussion of an idea, whereas when you think about science, you think quantitative, you know, events and empirical.
No, I disagree. Some parts of science are.
Slacker doesn't need your help right now, man.
Yeah, science uses empirical information and applies the philosophy of science to it.
Just like about as much as they know what air's made of, they do time the same way. You've got time where it's not even an actual measurement of speed versus time. Time is speed in the distance, isn't it? Speed is is going forward in time. You can't have time without going forward, right?
I mean,
or in a direction. In a direction.
Because you have to have the two events separated in some capacity, and the only way to separate two things is to move one of them, you know, so you have to move it. When you picture taking a time measurement, the start and the stop are on top of each other, and when you start it, the stop moves away from the start, and you stop the stop where it stops, if that makes any sense. So you're trying to quantify.
But here's the problem. They say that gravity is a constant, but then you hear these guys in here. Yeah, the way I've always understood it, gravity is a constant.
But for most human interactions, we assume that it's basically constant.
If you drop something in a vacuum chamber in Australia versus the North Pole versus anywhere in the world, inside of that vacuum chamber, that object's going to drop at a certain rate of speed, right?
That would be approximately the same.
What do you mean that's a false statement? What do you mean that's a false statement?
False statement. The clean and absolute false statement. There is no wiggle room. Because gravity has different measurement at each latitude.
But the differences are small enough.
That's what the
differences are small enough that for most uses we assume it's constant.
Yeah.
If you need to be really accurate, it's not constant.
It's within point. What is it? 0.1 difference. 9.8 meters per second versus 9.7.
Your bowling ball and feather drop at the same rate, supposedly. The video shows this is your
they're
guys.
all at the same rate, given that they're both at the same location. And it'd be very hard to measure the difference even at the North Pole.
So gravity is constant.
Close enough for most uses.
All right, so time is constant.
We're going to use that as a clock. Terrible clock.
Time would be a constant.
We're going to take the time it takes a bowling ball to fall for 1 second between the North Pole and South Pole. Your clock would be a very inaccurate standard.
No, the point being is that the between the drop of the bowling ball and hitting the earth, that is that difference between the start and the stop is actual time.
Right,
that is actual. That's how you would actually measure.
100th of a second per hour.
That's how actually.
That would be a very bad clock.
Say that again.
If you had a 1/10 of a second error in your clock between the equator and the North Pole, that's a terrible clock.
You got to remember, every clock that's out there is just based on the base 60 system. It's all a mathematical construct. It is not actual time.
Not all of them. Most of them are display time in that format.
Well, you got 60 seconds, 60 minutes, etc. 24 hours, 360 degrees in a circle.
Yeah, that's the vast majority of clocks, but not all of them.
In my business, we deal with billionths of a second for accuracy in order to get our data to transfer properly.
Yeah, but that's taking the speed of light, which is based on 360 degrees. The speed of light is 186,000 miles per hour. Is based on 360 degrees.
Our whole world is based on the cesium atom.
Our whole world is based on Babylonian tacos.
David, let me cut to the chase. What's the problem with 360?
Because it's not accurate. It's not even a way that you would go about doing it with a person with common sense. If you wanted to measure time, you're not going to measure it with a formula of 360 degrees. You're going to measure it with the actual rate of drop of gravity of the amount of time.
Okay,
so feet. Because then you can measure how fast. Because time is always forward. It's never in reverse.
Sure. So if 360 is not the correct number, what is the correct number that we should use then?
That's what we're discussing right now.
David, are you claiming that you have common sense?
David, there's some problem with your thinking here. Do you understand that time units are arbitrary? Do you know what the word arbitrary means?
I know what arbitrary
that's the root of this problem.
Go ahead.
That means that we can divide it into units of 1, 360, 2,496. Like it's arbitrary. It's the same with distances. We can use feet, we can use meters, we can use... Heck, I can come up with a new ruler that I can call the Atsimabun. And then I can measure lengths in Atsimabuns. It's arbitrary, David. We don't need to have any good basis for it. Like, it could, for all I care, someone could have pulled it out of his arm and measured it using his arse hairs as rulers. It does not matter, David. If you do not understand this, I don't know why we are having this discussion.
I don't want to use that length measurement, if that's okay.
I've never measured an arse hair, but your brother's hair.
David, if I may add, you can change, like, the gravitational constant it has a certain value, but if you change the units that make it up, the numerical value changes. It doesn't matter. You can have your definitions of time, distance, and mass in whatever units you want. So if you want to call that made up, and we, although it's been referred to as arbitrary, be my guest. Enjoy it.
It's actually it's like the speed of time. This is what we're wanting to measure.
David, stop saying that. That makes my head hurt. Stop saying speed of time. That's such a stupid statement.
What is the formula for speed of time?
There's no concept of that. Where do you get this nonsense from?
Because that's the only way you could measure time.
No.
Yes, it is. Because time is going forward.
Right.
And you've got it into
at the same
360.
friggin'. I don't even want to say it, but it's just going forward, okay? There is no speed of time.
It doesn't have a velocity.
Yeah, you are being thrust forward in time right now. Every second that you breathe, you are moving forward in time.
And
But the time that you say that I'm living under is calculated with a mathematical formula based on base 60.
So what?
Well, but that base 60 is not based on the actual time itself, time and distance. That's the whole point.
Absolutely relevant. You've been told that several times. As long as everybody agrees on them and they're uniform, that's fine.
Well, I always
tell
thought.
them again, just one more time. For old
So
time's sake.
is there an astronomical event that takes exactly 24 hours a second, right?
no,
That
and
happens-
the Earth
that hap-
doesn't, and the Earth around the Earth rotation isn't even that exact.
Exactly, but one thing is gravity is a constant.
No, it's not.
Gravity.
Why can't you get it through your thick redneck skull when a few people have told you the same thing over and over again?
The way I understand,
Gravity,
you guys
David,
told me
shut up.
You told me gravity is a
not
constant. All right, let's
listen to me, David.
all right, let's
Not
Google it.
constant.
Let's Google it.
The accusation of stupidity could be levelled at the people engaging David because,
That is
he's
true.
fucking.
You're right about that.
Rational argument.
It's a test. It is proof of how fucking bored I am that I'm doing this, and anybody else who's engaged.
Well, feel free to do it. It's just like,
All right,
I'm just.
all right.
Nah, don't do it.
No,
We've
Chris,
got-
you're right. You're right. You're right.
The gravitational constant has a value. It's a bit messy, but that gravity has a set strength, a strength that works in three-dimensional space, is an accelerating force and is determined by mass. Okay, so that gravitational constant would be a time constant also. So gravity equals times distance, right?
All we have to do is go to another room and you can leave him alone.
Well, that'll be good. Chemo might come back in here after y'all get done, and he sees that you guys don't know what you're talking about. But you go ahead. Go play trivia for a minute.
No, I don't want to go to trivia. That's not fun either.
So your base
Just don't want to hear
your base
obnoxious,
60 Babylon.
screeching, cackling redneck voice.
But doesn't time as we know it change because of light and dark? The difference in hours of light and dark, but our clocks stay constant.
And thankfully, nobody's talking to him.
If you're living on Babylonian time, where did Right the Hand go? Are you still here, man? He left. He's going to make a video to wear y'all out.
There you go. I mean, look, fucking David trying to invoke Right the fucking Hand, like, your ally and fucking troll. troll ally, David. I mean, fucking hell.
I mean,
Why would you do that?
He got it because he understood what I was trying to get at.
Fuck off. He agrees. He would agree with you. Fucking.
Hey man, I'm tired. I am tired of eating Babylonian tacos for lunch, man.
Aye, Davey. Aye, I know.
Are we really not capable of just ignoring David? I mean, does everybody have to respond to the stupidity that?
Well, no, I'm listening to you, David. Keep going, David. I can hear you.
People do. They're slick doing it as well. Look, they're all the fucking same.
I know. We should ignore him too.
We've proven to you today that your time, which your gravity, is not even based on your own gravity. How bad is it when you're true believers? You're a true believer in gravity.
Blah, 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 blah.
Let's have a David rest, shall we?
Yep.
Oh, Rocket, you said it doesn't take Earth 24 hours to rotate. How long is it? Rocket.
Jeremy, look up sidereal time, okay?
So that's how long it takes an hour. Because I got a real problem with that sidereal orbit. How long does it take for Earth to? How long does it take for Earth to make a full rotation?
In reference to what? The sun or the stars?
Earth rotates, right? How long does it take to rotate all the way once?
Well, which point are you going to consider fixed to measure to? The stars or the sun? Because that's where the difference is.
Never a straight answer.
No, that's a straight answer. You just got to pick one.
I can spin a tennis ball and tell you how long it takes to spin that.
Reference to you.
In reference to reality of how long it takes.
Well, no.
I'll skip the clarification and jump right to both answers. If you measure the sun, 1 day is 1 day. It's just 1 solar day. That's how we normally use it. If you use the stars, then 1 sidereal day is 0.997269 and some more digits solar days.
Question is a little bit malformed because just consider if you were spinning with that tennis ball when you spun it, how long would it take to make a circle reference to you, and how long would it take to make a circle reference to the ground or an outside observer?
Mesh, you two a question. The two of you just sponsors Slacker, and was that Rocket Scientist who just answered? Do you guys not go with the idea that space is a thing and it has its own stationary point?
Where would you put it?
The thing that creates no rotational inertia?
You mean like an inertial reference frame?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing you guys all seen YouTube videos of talking about, some theoretical place where you're sitting in a big, whatever they call those, at the fairs, you sit in the thing and it spins around, you get pinned to the wall.
Like a centrifuge or gravitron.
Yeah, whatever. But you can imagine, everything in space removed, every molecule, everything. So you got true, just nothing but space, not even, semi vacuum. And you can imagine sitting in this thing, it's just you in this big thing, right? You can imagine sitting in it and you not being pressed against the wall. And we could define that as it's not spinning, right? Because it's not creating any acceleration. And then some force, call it a god, whatever, some force hits it and starts spinning around, and now you're pinned against the wall. What's the difference between those two situations? I would think it would say that, this thing is spinning in space.
Well, in that situation, you've only got one thing spinning. Looking at the Earth spinning, it's more of like the teacup rides where you've got a spinning thing on a spinning thing.
I got you, but just like talking about this one example. But in the situation I was describing, couldn't we say that we can figure out the point at which this circular thing, whatever we call it, the gravitron thing, is going back to the same point it started from?
Yeah, in a more absolute sense, the sidereal day is more correct, you could say, for how long it takes the Earth to rotate, But that's less useful for day-to-day life because the solar day is more useful.
I understand that. I understand that. And, I understand the difference in sidereal and solar, but couldn't you not say there's an absolute, based on space itself, measurement of how fast the Earth is spinning?
No, I couldn't answer that because I need a reference point.
But isn't space itself a reference point, given the analogy that I just put forward?
I don't know how you stop. You're moving.
Yeah, you can somewhat tell if you're accelerating or not. So yeah, you can you can know that you're not rotating with respect to space, and that's what the sidereal day is.
Well, but do we need the stars in order to do that? Can't we just use space itself, and just by measuring the rotation itself and measuring the acceleration? I mean, if we have a situation in which there is no acceleration, we know we have no rotation, right?
Well, the acceleration of the Earth is so small, it's kind of hard to measure conveniently, so the stars are a good reference point.
I'm not talking about whether you can measure, and I'm talking about theoretical, and whether what Jeremy was saying
it'd be about the same.
There's not an absolute point of rotation. Could we not theoretically figure out what the real, true rotation of the Earth is without measuring against the stars or the sun?
If you had accurate enough accelerometers, sure.
Okay, but so there is that theoretical point of a true rotation of the Earth, right? And how long it actually takes for that same point on the Earth to come back to the exact same point it was before.
Yeah, phone call. Hold on.
We'd have to assume it's not orbiting, right? Because that's going to throw all of our stuff off a little bit. Because how do you, measure with the distance it's moving laterally or in orbit-wise versus its rotation itself? But I think it's not unreasonable to suggest that there is a true absolute rotation of the Earth.
I would disagree with that because it is really difficult. Because defining an because then to do that you need an absolute inertial reference frame.
Yeah.
And I can't contemplate in my head how you'd actually define that.
But you couldn't just do it mathematically?
Well,
still in reference to
still need a frame. We have the Earth-centered.
Where is the starting point?
Yeah, we have the Earth-centered inertial frame, which we typically use, but even that has some variances over a long period of time, and that's like the best one we have so far.
Well,
remember, rotation is always relative from one frame to the other. So it's not just a point in space. You need an actual reference frame to measure the rotation relative to.
Something about that sounds incomplete to me. Because it seems like we could, if we know the mass of the Earth, we can figure out gravity, we can figure out the acceleration that the rotation would be causing, subtract that from the gravity, and we could figure out what the rotational velocity must be. Can we not? Just mathematically?
The problem would be getting accurate enough measurements of those things.
Well, I understand the difficulty with the accuracy. I'm not saying we can do it in the real world, but I'm just saying mathematically and theoretically. It could be known, right?
There's velocities that we not acceleration, but there's velocities we can't know about.
Well, yeah, but we're just talking about acceleration due to rotation, right?
Scott, I think you have the beginnings of our research proposal.
Yeah. I'm just sure why we have to stick so hard, that I would say we being people in this group, to this idea that I don't know what I'm saying. Never mind.
Even the practical thing of what you're trying to accomplish there is.
I'm not saying this is practically doable. I'm just talking about theoretically doable and why we need to stick to this sidereal versus the thing and talk about these reference points in order. Because I understand exactly what you're saying. If you want to talk about how fast the Earth comes around to the same point on this, pointing at the sun, sure. We're going to get a different value than how fast the Earth spins around to point at the same star. versus I think there's another third option of how fast does the Earth reference around a point to the same point in space without any other object in which to point, and as in being space is itself, it's its own coordinate system.
Well, measuring to the to distant stars is basically the same thing.
I agree, but it seems to me it leaves anybody who wants to reject this as an out. Now, I'm not saying they wouldn't reject it anyways. No, don't make that conclusion. But it just seems to be making the discussion that much more difficult to reject the possibility that there is some kind of almost godlike reference frame, and that treating space as a coordinate system in and of itself, that we can say something about it.
I mean, like they were saying, it wouldn't give you an absolute reference frame because there's still velocity that you can't know, but you could tell that you're in inertial or not inertial.
Yeah. But it seems like that's enough to do the mathematics, though. Did I just cut out again?
No, I'm just still trying to figure out how there's any benefit to the argument in either way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure it is or isn't, but
I mean, practical measurements, that's why we stick with sidereal and solar. Those are practical. From a standpoint of argument, do I want to, mathematically exclude the rotation around the galaxy, 250 million year circuit, versus the entire universe having a spin of, a gazillion years? I don't know. Would be neat to know where the Big Bang happened, if it even has a location.
Pretty sure it technically happened everywhere.
Yeah, but I hate that answer.
Phythesis, or whatever your name is, are you mic'd up? Who's your favourite flat earther? Mine's Sally Pittner. Do you like Sally Pittner?
Is everybody dead in here? Just sitting, waiting for something to happen?
Waiting for a flat earther with any kind of brain to show up.
Yeah, tell us about the time you saw killing.
Tell us what?
The time